Coming up on Maine Challenge, State Representative Jeffrey Evangelos from Friendship, Maine. Hello, and welcome to Maine Challenge, a presentation of Lincoln County Indivisible and Lincoln County Television. Our guest today is State Representative Jeffrey Evangelos from Friendship. Welcome, Jeff.
Welcome. Thank you, Jack. Good to see you again.
It's good to have you on. You are running for your fourth term in the House of Representatives?
Yes, House District 91. I represent Waldoboro, Friendship, West Union, and the town of Washington.
Okay. And you are an independent, and I'd love to hear a few thoughts about what it's like to run and to serve as an independent in the legislature.
Well, because of what's going on in the country right now, the House divided, the country's divided, being an independent, non-affiliated, it's a good place to be. I don't caucus with either party. I maintain my independent status, try to represent the constituents the best I can, but always vote my conscience, always keeping that in mind. But it does present some challenges when you're running for office because you don't get the power of either party behind you. But, the people out on the streets and out in the countryside, they seem to, they like that right now because they're so disaffected by the negative tone coming out of both political parties. So I always run a positive campaign, never done an attack mail or an attack ad, never will. I think people appreciate that.
And I would briefly editorialize that when we served together, I definitely observed that you were a very effective legislator. It did not hurt your ability to serve your constituents at all for you not to be affiliated with either party. And I bet that's still the case.
Well, it's nice of you to say that. I work hard at it. It's for anyone out there wondering, and I know you know it because when I've been to your house and your office a couple times. It's a full-time job with a lot of responsibility. You know as well as I do, some of them don't take it that seriously and aren't that engaged, but others take it very seriously. I know you always did. My constituents, they're really good to me. They show me a lot of respect, and I return the favor. I'm lucky. I have a lot of good people I'm representing.
Now, I've been observing the legislature in various degrees of intensity since 1974, and I have never seen what we're seeing today, which is the Republican caucuses in both the House and the Senate refusing to even respond to a question from leadership about a special session. Can you talk about what's going on there?
Well, sure. We voted again 2 days ago. All 6 independents voted yes to go back in. I believe every Democrat voted yes to go back in. 2 Republicans voted yes to go back in. And astonishingly, the rest of them didn't even vote no. They just didn't respond to the poll. I think you're witnessing a classic case of obstructionism. And, for the Republican leadership, I have a message for them. You're going to have to elect a lot of people and become the majority party if you want to call the shots up there. You're not dealing from a position of strength, so you're inventing a narrative as to why we can't go back in. You've been clamoring to open the entire economy up because of the damage that the COVID outbreak has caused. But B, you're saying that we can't go into a special session because it's too dangerous. I mean, those are contradictory thoughts. What it underscores is that they're playing games. But there is another piece to it, and that is that constitutionally, there are 2 ways to call the legislature back in. One is this polling that goes on amongst the political party caucuses. But the second is the governor can call us in unilaterally, and she needs to. I don't think that it's serving the state's interests right now by legislators not going back into session. Our committees are meeting. We're pushing bills out. They're extremely important bills. In fact, yesterday, probably one of the most important bills in the history of the state of Maine, and I'm not exaggerating, was the action in the Judiciary Committee yesterday, where we negotiated and discussed options with our four tribal nations, the Micmacs, Maliseets, Penobscots, and Passamaquoddies, and we produced 3 bills, including LD 2074, which is going to undo largely 200 years of seriously bad history and the undermining of our Native nation sovereignty, which only exists in the state of Maine. The other 49 states already operate under federal inherent sovereignty. And yesterday, we voted a variety of reforms to put us on a par with the other states. Hugely important issue, historic, and was proud to be a part of it. And the committee voted 6-1. The rest of the participants were remote. They have 24 hours to weigh in on the vote, but it was a 6-1 vote. And this bill came as a result of 16 months of collaboration, task force meetings, and public hearings. So it's truly a historic effort to undo the injustices of the past and to seriously reform what I consider to be the injustices of the 1980 Settlement Act, which did not solve the problems that were attempted back then. So so what I'm saying is, if the governor doesn't call us back in and the Republicans refuse to collaborate and be decent about it, every single initiative and bill that all of the committees are working on right now are going to die, and that's not acceptable. So, I'm asking publicly, I'll ask right now, Governor Mills, please call us back into session, and we need to do our work. If we can go to Walmart in Hannaford, we should be able to go to the Civic Center and distance 6 feet apart. I'm ready.
So all the committees have been reporting out the bills that were left somewhat in limbo when you shut down early due to the COVID virus. Am I correct?
That is correct. And the Judiciary was the last committee to meet, and we finished yesterday.
And so the committees had work undone. They've come back and they're either completing or have completed the work on those bills. So what the House and the Senate need to do is come back and vote those bills up or down into law or not. And then the governor will sign what the governor signs. And then this legislature will be complete. Am I right?
Correct. If she vetoes some of the bills, we'll come back for a veto day and vote on overriding or sustaining. That's correct.
Right. Now, the obstruction that's coming from one party, do they have a solution? Have they got an alternative to how, A, you're going to dispose of 500 bills or however many it is? And did the legislature adjourn sine die, for good and all?
Yes, they did. So we're subject to call back to a special session, which is what we're trying to do. The Republicans, in their proposal to call the legislature back in, they set conditions. A minority party in both chambers of the legislature setting conditions, and the conditions were that they will come back into session and only vote on bills related to COVID and their intention of stripping the governor of her emergency powers. But they don't want to act on the rest of the bills. And that's just, we need to do the people's business. There are Republican-sponsored bills waiting, on the sidelines as well. And, I want to go back and do our job and finish the work we started. And as for the governor's executive powers, we'll revisit that when we get back into session. Our COVID case counts are fairly low in the state, so the response is working to an extent.
Do the bills that are not reported out of committee when the legislature adjourns, do they automatically become carryovers into the next legislature, or are they died?
There's no such thing as a carryover. The Constitution says that all unfinished bills and unfinished business at the end of a legislative session, and with the election of a new legislature constitutionally duly sworn in early December, everything dies. That's that's not an adequate outcome, especially when you have Native American tribes waiting 400 years for justice. That's not acceptable. I've got several important bills of my own. I've got the bill I worked with the Innocence Project on. There are 2 or 3 people in prison who have maintained their innocence, but they're unable to get a post-conviction hearing. And we passed, the Judiciary Committee voted nearly unanimously, not quite a week and a half ago, it was LD 302, that will allow for a fair hearing when new evidence comes forward in your case. Right now, we have a very arcane statute which says that you have a 1-year time limitation for the introduction of the new evidence upon discovery, and the AG's Office of Prosecution has been arguing, it's called the due diligence standard, that if your original lawyer should have or could have brought up this issue and didn't, you're out of luck. Now, that's just not good enough. The Massachusetts Criminal Code, Rule 30B, says, in the interest of justice, all new evidence deserves a hearing at any time. And as I pointed out to the committee in defending my bill and to Attorney General Fry, we need to use the same standards when I supported the cold case homicide squad establishment, where we're using evidence that is 20, 30, and 40 years old. And just because the detectives at the time missed it, we don't tell the victims, sorry, we know who did it, but we can't bring the case forward. So we want the playing field level. So yeah, these are extremely important bills that need to be brought forward, need to be voted on, and then the governor can sign them or veto them, and we'll do our work.
But of course, if those bills die, you can bring them back in the next legislature, correct?
Correct. Start all over. Committee hearings, new committee chairs, who some people will lose, some people will win. You know how hard it is. It's very difficult, especially on these tough, controversial issues that have been ensconced in Maine law for 200 years. Maine is late to the game on criminal justice reform. We're way behind. We've never held a police officer accountable for a law enforcement involved shooting. I did submit a bill on that, and I also have an outstanding case regarding the boy, Gregory Jackson, who was gunned down, 5 bullets in the back, 18 years old, for running in the woods. So that case is under appeal. So there are a lot of criminal justice reforms. We need to get up to speed. So I know that the work of Representative Warren in the Criminal Justice Committee and Representative Talbot Ross have brought a lot of reform initiatives forward. You were on government oversight, correct?
Yes, I was chair for 2
so
terms.
That there'll be a lot of important matters coming before them. We've got this information we received regarding the fusion center that is, in my opinion, illegally spying on innocent Mainers who are lawfully engaging in First Amendment activities. There is a raft of issues that needed to look into, but we need to get back to Augusta and do our job.
I would think that one of the more burning issues would be before the Education Committee, and that would be some funding and some process for reopening schools, which is a very hot issue, obviously.
Well, absolutely. Right, the announcement last week that all 15 counties were going to have a similar policy didn't seem to make a lot of sense. You're going to have concentrated populated areas that are more susceptible to a COVID outbreak. On the other hand, I don't necessarily believe that the decision should be made for individual school boards and superintendents, because you'll have chaos. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see how August materializes. You live near Route 1, and you know as well as I do, there's 1 million people here from out of state, and I'm not sure that we're getting the in-state count on these Maine COVID cases. But Colin Woodard has been writing in the Press Herald that the out-of-state tourists are also contracting the illness, and those aren't being reported in our numbers. So I don't think we're looking at real numbers. The other piece of it, you're absolutely correct. It isn't just aid education, it's municipal revenue sharing, the two pillars of the help, in addition to the homestead exemption. The finance office announced that we're $1.5 billion short in the next year and a half. There's another reason to call the legislature back in. I don't think the governor should be acting through executive fiat and making those decisions. We need to weigh in. But you're absolutely right, where the estimate is we're $500 million short in the current fiscal year. And that's going to be bad news for towns and schools. And we need to get up there and weigh in on that.
And if the legislature doesn't approve some supplemental funding, then the towns are really going to be hurting.
You're right. Absolutely. And I've contacted my 4 towns and warned them that there's news coming, but whatever it is, it's not going to be good news. I asked them to get back to me and prioritize what they wanted me to work hard on to protect. And obviously the boards of selectmen and women said municipal revenue sharing was something they were very concerned about. And the second one's aid education. You know as well as I do what's going to happen. Property taxes are going to soar if we can't come up with decent solutions. I will say that Congress in Washington is negotiating right now over a new package. It's not going well. But as the economy continues to fall off to towns, cities, and school systems in the package to some extent. If you just quickly, and then I'll let you go on. There's one thing that none of our states, towns, or cities have. That's a printing press. Federal government has a printing press. We don't. They can make fake money. We have to deal in real money. And so, yeah, we're going to need the help.
Well, I certainly hope that the people in the towns and the counties and the school districts understand how important it is for the legislature to come back, not for partisan bickering, but for funding, for a supplemental budget that's going to make it possible to try to get back to normal whenever that is and whatever that is. And there may not be a normal as we have come to know it. But I hope the towns and the voters understand that there are a group of individuals in the legislature who are preventing government from working. And it bothers me very much. It wouldn't matter to me if they were Republicans or Democrats. They just shouldn't be obstructing like this. And I'm sorry to editorialize, but I feel very strongly about this as a citizen.
So well stated. I don't disagree with that. But I also believe that if we can't get the Republicans to come to the table and the obstruction continues, that the governor has to act. She has the authority, and why should she let them get away with it? We don't have to. We need. You are absolutely right. The public wants us back up there and working.
In terms of the COVID virus and the way that the state and the towns can do their part, do you see in your district, and do you see an effort in the legislature to help the communities struggling with this? I mean, I hear from even a member of the school board who says, well, there are only 2 cases in Knox County, so that's nothing to worry about. Well, that could change very quickly. And I think it's the chokehold in the ICUs that is really the critical point. And if we can keep that at bay, we're doing good. And if we can't, we're in bad shape. I'm sorry, I'm editorializing more than I should be, but I'm really concerned about getting everybody on the same page to work this through and get through it. And the only way I think we're going to get through it is with massive testing, contact identification and tracing, and then a vaccine. And that we know the vaccine is still a year or more away. I really want everybody, I really want to feel like everybody is working together on this project. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I can only speak for my towns. I think my towns have responded well. They're taking all the necessary precautions. We use the legislators in the area as an interface between our towns and the executive level. I have good contacts within the governor's office when I get an individual problem regarding a business that wants to open, or a municipality or a school district that needs some help. I'm getting good responses. Contrary to the information that's out there, I'm also having a very good response from Laura Fortman and the Department of Labor. We've all had those difficult cases to deal with, but it's nobody's fault, and I don't want to get into the blame game on this. The fact is, we had a system that was taking in about 650 unemployment cases a week, new claims, and then all of a sudden, in a three-week period, we had 100,000. So of course, we didn't have a system built to handle it. But they are getting to the cases. All of my cases currently, I'm 100% up to snuff. They have all been solved. I'm happy to say, and because I have the prison nearby, I've had a couple of released inmates who had been working for a year or two, and they were tough cases to get solved because their payments got suspended. But I was able, because they're back in the workforce, I was able to get their cases repaired as well. So it's difficult because you have two countervailing forces at work. We have a public health emergency. We want to protect our senior citizens and others from a deadly outbreak of a virus, and we have our economy, which is going in the tank because it's caused somewhat of a depression because of the curtailments, and the executive department is working out the reduction of the curtailments on a piecemeal basis. I'm not going to criticize anyone's response. I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to be president or governor right now. It's just a difficult situation, although, obviously the rhetoric coming out of Washington didn't help.
Interesting. I'm want to make sure that we're cover one of the bigger issues for you and a big issue for the state of Maine. And we touched on it a little earlier, but I want to get back to it because you're right in the heart of the action. And that is the tribal issue, especially around sovereignty and how it will be redefined and what that means to Maine people and the Maine tribal population.
Well, I don't think there's anything to be afraid of. What we're going to have is the situation that exists in every other state. And, to give you a simplified explanation, we're going to basically have 5 little countries within our state, and it allows for self-determination and economic development, and will allow the tribes to undo the justices of the past. You may be aware that in 1980, the state was able to negotiate what I considered to be a bad deal for the tribes, where the tribes only received they were conferred municipal power, but not federal sovereignty. So we're the only state where the tribes on their own lands have to ask the state permission when they want to do a big project. And I'm not just talking about gambling. It's, they fight over the Penobscot River, and it's just not okay. They are going to become small economic engines in their areas, and they're going to create a lot of jobs. And allowing the self-determination for the Native nations puts us on a par with where we are in the rest of the United States. I mean, there's a couple of things I want Maine people to be aware of. Our Native Americans in Maine were the last population to receive the right to vote. Astonishingly, our tribes, our Native Americans were given the right to vote in 1967. After the 1965 Voting Rights Act, they still couldn't vote. So their boys were getting drafted into Vietnam, and they couldn't vote. It's just a ridiculous situation. And, we had the program in Maine where we were taking their children away and trying to make them white, putting them in white homes. It's just near genocidal. We had such a good collaboration with the tribes and their chiefs and their attorneys. The committee work was excellent. There was not a harsh word spoken. Very good outcome. They have a magnificent lawyer in Corey Hinton, represents the Passamaquoddies, and Chief Francis of the Penobscots spoke eloquently. There are a couple of other issues. So there isn't, I don't think sovereignty is going to affect my people one bit. It's going to be like the other states. Would like to talk a little bit about the CMP corridor and the lobster industry stress.
Good. Yes, we've only got about a minute left, but that would be great if you'd touch on it.
Well, this federal judge in his rulings are putting such a stress on the lobster industry. And in his last opinion that he wrote a couple of months ago, the first paragraph of his opinion, he was talking about New Bedford in the 19th century. I mean, it's totally irrelevant. Everyone knows that the right whales are being slaughtered by the container ships up in the St. Lawrence Valley, but they don't, you get a container ship strike, and they say, oh, we got to do something about the Maine lobster industry. Well, they won't address the container ships because Walmart won't have anything to sell. Secondly, the CMP corridor. I mean, I'm not in favor of it. And, I just want to put it like this, if you could extend the show just for a minute. But let's assume that Maine discovered a power source on the Hudson River. And we told Massachusetts, we got a great deal for you. We're going to run that power line right through the Berkshire Mountains, right through your tourist area in the Berkshire Mountains, and then make a left-hand turn and send it up to Maine. And you're going to get 40 cents off on your power bill. Hey, what a deal. I mean, what would the people of Massachusetts say? But I mean, that is the bill of goods we're being sold here. And so I'm not buying it.
Interesting. Well, I hate to have to wrap it up because there's an awful lot that we could talk about, and I know you're right in the thick of a lot of it, but I really appreciate your coming on and your willingness to serve, especially your willingness to serve in the legislature. I know quite well that it is a sacrifice. You are not paid well. You have 10,000 bosses who can change their opinions on a whim, and it's a tough job, and I appreciate you're up there constantly with great attendance, working hard for the people of your district. And I would just thank you, Jeff Evangelos, for coming on Maine Challenge and for representing the people of your district so well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. And maybe before the election, come on again. There's some other issues we didn't touch on, and I'd be happy to appear with you again. Thanks for having me.
Very good. And thanks to all of you watching Maine Challenge, a production of Lincoln County Indivisible and Lincoln County Television.
Show your support for Maine Challenge and LCTV's programming. We're all about community. Please go to lctv.org to make a contribution. Your support makes us stronger together.